Tell us about the Pebble smartwatch.
We built the first one. It was literally just something that I wanted to have. Like, I wanted to be able to see what was happening on my phone while I was cycling. I commuted by bicycle. So we built this like Arduino prototype that had a lot of zap straps and was just kind of zap strapped to the wrist. Didn't really work too well as a watch. It had a lot of problems like short battery life and stuff like that. But when I showed it to people, people were like, that's cool. That's more than a project. That could actually become a product. We were still 3 or 4 guys in our living room in Palo Alto when we launched the project on Kickstarter. We had plotted out a couple different paths of like, what would it look like if we raised $100,000 on Kickstarter? And then in the crazy world, what if we raised $1 million on Kickstarter? And luckily within the first 28 hours, we raised $1 million. And so we were able to immediately take that path towards manufacturing at a larger scale.
You had a lot of problems with people complaining that the watch wasn't going to be ready, that it's vaporware.
I think we tried really hard to keep people updated through our Kickstarter blog posts. Every 2 to 3 weeks, we would post another video or photos or just progress that we had made. And we tried to convey that it was a hard problem that we were solving, that there were hurdles and there were issues that we were running into, and here's how we were getting around those issues. But at the same time, it took longer than we expected, and people, we had to answer to that.
In terms of best practices, let's help the guys who are doing Kickstarter projects now. Let's help all the other smartwatch guys.
Kickstarter is not, a single touch point and you touch it and it explodes. Kickstarter in a lot of ways is similar to Craigslist. It's a page on the internet that people can browse to. The real value of Kickstarter, in my mind, is the fact that it's simplified. It's a single landing page. It's kind of like LaunchRock for a hardware company. If you can tell the story, if you can explain why someone should back your project, support your project, there's a single green button on the right that people hit. And there's only one action that you can do. And so if you can tell your story in 2 to 3 minutes and explain to people what you're working on well enough for them to click a button, then you've effectively, completed the path. There's no click through, there's no sign up, it's just that one step. It all boils back to the point that you have to be able to explain what you're working on in a very concise manner.
What is it about wearables that needs to be solved to make them truly ubiquitous?
The reason why you should put a watch or a smartwatch or a wearable on your body is because it's useful, it solves a problem, and you can really appreciate it in your everyday life. It doesn't force you to change your life around the device. It just kind of meshes. And I think that a lot of the competitors, Samsung for example, have created products that on paper seem to be these over-spec'd machines, but no one has really thought about how they fit into your life. Like, one of the really cool things about Pebble is that it's a watch, it's at the front of your life. And I know that when I see someone wearing it, it's because they really like it. Because if you didn't like it, you wouldn't put it on your wrist every day. So I really like the fact that we're working on products that people use on a daily basis.
There's that sweet spot that you guys have clearly found. I mean, you got $10 million for the watches. So what were you thinking just as you began working on these watches, and what was the design goal?
So when we started designing our first watch and when we designed Pebble, we actually chose to have the screen centered in as the main aspect of the design. And that's because by downloading an app, you can actually change the look of the watch. And so we wanted to make sure that that was the maximum point. That was what people were looking at when they looked at Pebble. The rest of the design kind of falls into the back, and on purpose to show off the screen. And I think that if we could make a watch that was just screen on the top, that would be amazing. Unfortunately, the technology is not there yet. The next step is inviting developers to just create more and more functionality on the wrist so that you don't have to buy a new watch. You can just use the existing Pebble you have, and it takes on a different shape.
But in terms of innovation, it's just going to be colors, different colors, right?
Yeah.
Different colored watches, and maybe fingerprint sensors.
Fingerprint sensors all over.
That'd be pretty badass.
Yeah.